At the crossroads between myth and reality, an enigmatic figure stands, his guitar in hand and a dark PACT echoing through the decades. Robert Johnson, the legendary Mississippi bluesman, is not just a name in American music history, but a symbol of transformation, mystery, and some would say a bargain with forces beyond human comprehension. His story, as rich in nuances as the notes he plucked, transports us to a world where talent and superstition are inseparably intertwined. Imagine a dark night in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, where shadows dance to the sounds of primal, visceral blues. It is in this scenario that the legend of Robert Johnson was born, a young musician whose mediocre talent transformed, almost overnight, into incomparable virtuosity. How can we explain such an artistic metamorphosis? The answer, according to blues lore, lies in a diabolical pact, an exchange of soul for supernatural ability. But before delving into the shadows of this supposed pact, it is crucial that we understand the historical and cultural context that allowed such a legend to flourish. The early 20th century saw the American South plunged into an atmosphere of racial oppression, extreme poverty, and a widespread sense of hopelessness. The blues emerged as the voice of this collective anguish, a musical cry that echoed the pains and desires of a marginalized population. Robert Johnson was born in 1911 in Hazelhurst, Mississippi, in the heart of this segregated and turbulent America. His childhood and youth were marked by instability and difficulties, a direct reflection of the conditions faced by the African American community at the time. Young Robert, like so many others, found in the blues not only a form of expression, but a possible way to escape the arduous life that destiny seemed to have in store for him. Initially, Johnson was considered a mediocre guitarist, unable to keep up with the more experienced musicians in the juke joints, the improvised bars where the blues came to life night after night. Son House, one of the pioneers of Delta blues, even commented on young Robert's musical ineptitude, describing his attempts to play as noisy and irritating. This cruel assessment, coming from a respected master, could have been the end of Johnson's musical career before it even began. However, something extraordinary happened. Johnson disappeared for a period, and when he returned, his guitar skills had transformed in such a drastic and inexplicable way that it left everyone perplexed. The once clumsy musician now played with a dexterity and emotional depth that rivaled the greatest names in the blues. It was at this moment that the legend of the pact began to take shape. According to myth, Johnson went to a crossroads at midnight, the place and time traditionally associated with mystical rituals and Southern folk traditions. There he encountered a shadowy figure, the devil himself, some say, who would tune in your guitar in exchange for your soul. This narrative, although fantastic, found fertile ground in the popular imagination, fueled by the superstitious atmosphere that permeated Delta culture. The idea of a pact with the devil was neither new nor exclusive to the blues. In European tradition, similar stories had circulated for centuries, such as the legend of Faust, who sold his soul in exchange for knowledge and power. In the African American context, such narratives took on their own contours, mixing with elements of voodoo and other spiritual practices brought by enslaved people from Africa. It's important to note that the legend of Johnson's pact didn't emerge immediately after his musical transformation. It was a gradual buildup, fueled by decades of speculation and the mystery surrounding his life and untimely death. Johnson, himself in his rare interviews, never mentioned such a pact. However, his lyrics, full of references to supernatural forces and encounters with the devil, certainly contributed to the mythology that formed around him. Songs such as Crossroad Blues, Me and the Devil Blues, and Hellhound on My Trail are often cited as evidence of the supposed pact. In these compositions, Johnson explores themes of supernatural persecution, demonic encounters, and the feeling of being doomed. However, a deeper analysis reveals that such themes were recurrent in the blues of the time, reflecting the anxieties and collective imagination of the African American community in the South. The truth behind Johnson's musical evolution is probably much more prosaic, though no less impressive. During his period of absence, it is likely that the young musician dedicated himself intensely to studying and practicing the guitar. Some historians suggest that he may have received guidance from other talented bluesmen, such as Ike Zimmerman, known for teaching in cemeteries at night, a detail that has certainly fueled supernatural speculation. Regardless of the origin of his abilities, Robert Johnson's impact on the development of the blues and by extension American popular music is undeniable. His innovative guitar technique, combining bass lines, chords, and melodies in a previously unprecedented way, set new standards for the instrument. His compositions, marked by extraordinary lyrical and emotional depth, elevated the blues to new, Artistic heights. Johnson's influence extended far beyond his short life. He died in 1938, aged 27, under circumstances as mysterious as his rise to fame. Decades after his death, musicians of blues, rock, and other genres continued to study and revere his work. Artists such as Eric Clapton, Keith Richards, and Bob Dylan have cited Johnson as a key influence, helping to perpetuate not only his music, but also the aura of mystery that surrounded him. The myth of the PACT, far from diminishing Johnson's legacy, served to amplify his cultural importance. He became more than a talented musician, became an archetype, a living representation of the artist who sacrifices everything for his art. This narrative resonated deeply in American culture, especially during the countercultural movements of the 1960s and 1970s, when the search for authenticity and transcendence through art was at its height. The persistence of the Johnson PACT legend also tells us a lot about human nature and our need to explain the extraordinary. In the face of such exceptional talent and such a dramatic transformation, the idea of supernatural intervention seems to many more plausible than the more mundane reality of dedication and intensive practice. This tendency to attribute mystical causes to exceptional achievements is a constant in human history, from ancient Greek myths to contemporary urban legends. In the case of Robert Johnson, the PACT myth also serves as a powerful metaphor for the difficult choices and sacrifices required of artists, especially those from marginalized backgrounds. The idea of selling one's soul can be interpreted as a representation of the ethical and personal commitments that many artists face in their search for success and recognition. Furthermore, Johnson's legend perfectly illustrates the unique fusion of African and European elements that characterizes African American culture. The concept of a pact with the devil, although it has roots in European tradition, takes on new contours when transplanted to the context of the Mississippi Delta, mixing with beliefs and spiritual practices of African origin. It is crucial, however, not to allow the myth to eclipse the reality of the man and artist that was Robert Johnson. His life was marked by real, tangible hardships, from poverty and systemic racism to the poor conditions in which blues musicians worked at the time. His musical genius, although extraordinary, was the result of natural talent, tireless dedication, and a keen artistic sensitivity, not supernatural intervention. Johnson's discography, although small, just 29 known recordings, is a testament to his genius. His compositions capture the essence of Delta blues, with his evocative lyrics, hypnotic melodies, and a technical mastery of the guitar that was years ahead of his time. Songs like Sweet Home Chicago, Love in Vain, and I Believe I'll Dust My Broom became classics, reinterpreted by generations of musicians and helping to define the sound of modern blues. Johnson's guitar technique was particularly revolutionary. He developed a style that simulated the sound of several instruments playing simultaneously, creating the illusion of a full accompaniment with just 6 strings. This innovative approach profoundly influenced the development of the guitar in blues and rock, paving the way for future virtuosos on the instrument. Johnson's untimely death at age 27 only added another layer of mystery to his legend. The exact circumstances of his passing remain the subject of debate among historians and blues enthusiasts. The most accepted theory is that he was poisoned by a jealous husband, a sadly common occurrence in the music scene at the time. However, the lack of reliable records and the fragmented nature of contemporary accounts leave room for speculation, some of which further fuels the myth of the diabolical pact. The idea that Johnson died as a result of his supposed pact, the devil came to collect his debt, gained traction in the decades following his death. This narrative fits perfectly with the archetype of the cursed artist, a recurring figure in modern cultural mythology. The fact that Johnson died at 27, the same age as other legendary musicians like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Kurt Cobain, only reinforced this perception of a brilliant but doomed life. Robert Johnson's legacy far transcends the few recordings he left and the legends that surround his life. It represents a pivotal moment in the evolution of American music, an inflection point where rural Delta blues began its transformation into a sophisticated and influential art form. His work served as a bridge between older African-American musical traditions and the new sounds that emerged in the following decades. Johnson's influence can be traced directly through the development of Chicago blues, rhythm and blues, and eventually rock and roll. Musicians such as Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, and Elmore James, who helped define the sound of Chicago blues in the 1950s, were deeply influenced by Johnson's style. This musical lineage continued through rock pioneers like Chuck Berry and Little, Richard to 1960s British rock giants like the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. The resurgence of interest in Johnson in the 1960s and 1970s coincided with a period of broader cultural reappraisal in the United States. The civil rights movement had brought a new appreciation for African American culture, and young musicians, both white and black, were rediscovering the roots of the blues. In this context, Johnson's recordings, with their raw emotional intensity and surprising musical sophistication, seemed to capture the essence of a musical tradition that many feared was being lost. The legend of Johnson's PACT, far from being mere folklore, has become an integral part of rock mythology. It perfectly encapsulates the romantic idea of the artist as an outsider, someone willing to do the unthinkable in the name of his art. This narrative resonated strongly with musicians and fans in an era of counterculture and rebellion against established norms. However, it is important to recognize that this mythologizing of Johnson, while powerful and inspiring in many ways, also risks obscuring the historical and social reality in which he lived and worked. The myth of the Devil's Pact, as fascinating as it is, can distract from the real struggles and challenges faced by African American musicians in the segregated South of the early 20th century. Robert Johnson's life was shaped by very real and earthly forces: systemic racism, endemic poverty, and the limited opportunities available to black artists at the time. His musical genius flourished not through supernatural intervention, but despite the enormous social and economic barriers he faced. Recognizing this in no way diminishes the magnitude of your achievements. On the contrary, it makes them even more impressive. As we move into the 21st century, Robert Johnson's legacy continues to evolve and be reinterpreted. New generations of musicians and listeners continue to discover his music, finding it an inexhaustible source of inspiration and connection to the roots of American music. Historians and musicologists continue to unravel the mysteries of his life and career, bringing new perspectives on his impact and meaning. Robert Johnson's Dark Pact, whether understood as a fascinating legend or a powerful metaphor, remains central to our understanding not just of the blues, but of the very nature of creativity and artistic sacrifice. He reminds us that sometimes the greatest artistic achievements seem to transcend rational explanations, touching something deep and mysterious in the human experience. As we continue to explore and celebrate Robert Johnson's legacy, it is crucial to maintain a balance between appreciation of the myth and recognition of historical reality. His music, with all its emotional power and technical sophistication, stands as an enduring testament to the transformative power of art. Johnson's true pact was perhaps not with supernatural forces but with music itself, a commitment to dedicate his life to expressing profound universal truths through his songs. In the end, Robert Johnson's story teaches us that true magic lies not in supernatural pacts, but in the power of human determination, the tireless pursuit of excellence, and the ability of art to transcend the limitations of its time and place. His legacy continues to resonate through the decades, a powerful reminder that sometimes extraordinary talent can seem as inexplicable and mysterious as any supernatural legend.